Recorded in beautiful Vancouver, Washington, this is the Vancouver Symphony Orchestra podcast, and I'm your host, Ashley Hall. This episode is part of our special series, VSO Encore, where we revisit pieces and performers from concerts past. In this episode, I spoke with saxophonist Jeff Siegfried, the VSO's featured guest artist during performances on November 2nd and 3rd, 2019 at Skyview Concert Hall. We discussed how he's trying to make the most of this difficult time and the unusual circumstances of his visit last November. He also played a couple of solo pieces for you to enjoy. Hi, Jeff. It's nice to speak with you.
Hi, Ashley.
Well, things are a little bit weird right now. How have things been for you during this social distancing stuff?
Well, it's been an adjustment for sure. I teach at West Virginia University in Morgantown, West Virginia, and we have moved from in-person lessons to distance learning, and it's been really interesting. The students have been extremely resilient and have really responded to the new format, but it takes some getting used to for sure. Thankfully, my friends and family are all safe, and I am incredibly grateful for that.
Well, I'm glad to hear it. So you've been able to keep making music in some degree?
Yeah, in one degree or another. In some ways, it's been almost it's been a fresh change of pace in some ways. Things are much slower. So I'm disappointed to see how many of my gigs were canceled and how some things have changed for the worse. And I miss playing in front of audiences. But it has honestly been over a decade since my practicing and my music making have been so internally focused. And many other musicians that I've spoken to have also responded in a similar way, getting time to practice things and practice in ways that we sometimes forget about in everyday life. So by no means has this time been a positive. It's incredibly detrimental not to be able to see people that I'm close to, and of course, so many people have suffered terribly, but one silver lining, I think for many artists, has been this time of internal focus.
Yeah, I think we're all trying to find ways to make a little bit of lemonade out of these lemons.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, so you were here in Vancouver with the Vancouver Symphony back in November, before the quarantining, but since then, what have you been doing?
I've been playing a lot with my saxophone sextet, the Moanin' Frogs. We've played all over the country, and up until a month ago, we were playing more or less once a month somewhere, and a lot of gigs with them. I've been doing a lot of work with my job at the university. It's been a pleasure to get to see so much of the state of West Virginia. I've been doing a lot of clinics with bands and orchestras throughout the state and getting to know high school students in the area. And actually, since the quarantine started, I've begun to do online lessons with a number of students throughout the state of West Virginia. Students who don't have any other access to music during this time. And that's been really interesting.
For sure. So you've mentioned that you're doing a little bit of teaching over the internet. How does that work?
We usually use Zoom and just set up a Zoom meeting between me and a student. And I've modified my lesson format a little bit. Rather than doing 50-minute lessons, I do 25-minute lessons twice a week. Because the sound quality can be so difficult sometimes over Zoom. Mm-hmm. The easiest way to get lessons to be productive is to have them more often and shorter. But it works similarly to many of the other online meetings that I'm sure so many people are used to.
Speaking of last November, I know that it was a little bit of a funny story how you came to be involved in that concert with the VSO. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. There was a guest artist that was planning to come over from Spain, and at the last moment, there were some major visa issues, and I wound up getting a call to about 3 weeks before the concert to come and play the Creston Concerto with the Vancouver Symphony Orchestra. And of course, I was thrilled to get the call, and after double and triple checking my schedule, I accepted the offer to come out, and such a joy to play with the group.
It's so funny. Have you ever had to get onto a gig that at that short of notice before?
Not a gig of this magnitude, certainly not. I'm not gonna lie. In my lifetime, I've gotten calls to come do a gig the day of. It's not unknown for something like that to happen, but those were local gigs. So this was
Right.
yeah, this was a first time experience, and possibly a once in a lifetime type of situation.
Well, I know we're deeply grateful that you were able to make that happen.
Well, I was deeply grateful to join with all those musicians and play that concert.
Well, and I understand that you actually are originally from this area.
That's right. I'm from Bellingham, Washington. Um,
Fantastic.
yeah, yeah. So my parents and a couple of friends were able to make the journey down for the concert. Um, it felt like a sort of homecoming, and it was just wonderful to be back in the area.
I'll bet. Especially coming back to such a specific climate, you know.
I am trying to remember, but I think that the week that I was in town was actually really beautiful.
Well,
I'm
that'd be unique for November.
yeah, it was very surprising, but I think I may have gotten a day of rain, a couple days of rain, but there were a few sunny days mixed in there too. So um, I think that anybody else coming back to town would think, well, it's just it's a little bit warm for a November day, but I understood that it was truly miraculous having experienced your standard Pacific Northwest November.
Well, the sky opened up for the return of the prodigal son. So you talked a little bit about the Paul Creston piece. Can you tell me a little more about it?
Yeah, it's a wonderful piece. Paul Creston was an Italian American composer. Um, Originally Giuseppe Guttaveggio, I think was his name. Um, and the concerto was written for Cecil Leeson, who was an important early saxophone virtuoso. I think it was premiered with the New York Philharmonic, um, but not with Leeson playing. I think it may have been Vincent Abato who was performing on that. Creston's language is often described as neoclassical, and I certainly hear that. But there's also sort of romantic effusiveness to it. That's just wonderful to hear. Really long, flowing phrases, and often phrases of unusual length, uh, combined in ways that we don't often hear. Some of that might be ascribed to the fact that Creston it was largely self-taught composer.
Hmm.
Um, the three movements are fast, slow, and fast, which is pretty common. However, the middle movement is the one that contains the cadenza, and unlike your run-of-the-mill cadenza, which is going to be maybe high and maybe fast and maybe loud, this cadenza is slow and low and quiet, and showcases the saxophonist's control above all else. And throughout the piece, I think there's a sort of anti-virtuosity, or maybe other virtuosity that's showcased. The most difficult things about the Creston Concerto have to do with control. Not going to say there's
Hmm.
no technique or no chops in it, but but I think that it really showcases sensitivity in a way that you don't see with every concerto.
And is this something that you had the occasion to perform prior to the concert with the VSO?
It's an important work in the repertoire, and I had studied it prior, but I had never played it with a large ensemble. So it was a thrill and an honor.
I see. Well, I know that it was really interesting for our audience to hear you play because, the saxophone isn't something that's often featured on that stage.
Hmm. Yeah,
Generally, tends to be some stuff a little bit more antique than that.
yeah, absolutely. I think the saxophone is a wonderful wonderful classical instrument, but it doesn't always get the same attention that one might associate with violin or cello or piano or voice. Um,
Hmm.
and as well as maybe more common orchestral brass and woodwind instruments. It's a real outlier, but I think that the saxophone as an instrument has some capabilities that are really unique, really rare. We were talking about the softness and the loudness, honestly, that the piece requires. Not a lot of instruments out there that are capable of those dynamic extremes. One member of the orchestra came up to me after one of the concerts and said, "That is the softest playing I have heard from any instrument ever."
Wow.
And I think that really speaks to some of what the saxophone can do. So I was really glad to get a chance to share this instrument with an audience that might not have heard it in a concerto setting before.
Absolutely. Well, speaking of which, I understand that you're prepared to play a little bit for me today.
Yeah, I would love to do a little bit of playing. Um, Maybe the first thing that I'll pull out is a piece by the maestro, by Salvador Brotons, the saxophone sonata for saxophone and piano. I recently had occasion to perform this at the North American Saxophone Alliance Biennial Conference in Phoenix, Arizona, or in Tempe, Arizona. And that was one of the last events to take place prior to the lockdown. So it was really a joy, and retrospectively, uh, a kind of last hurrah for the current period of the current season that I was playing.
Hmm.
And it was very well received by the saxophone community. So I'm hoping that this is a piece that gets played more and more. I know it's very popular in Europe, but lesser known in the United States. Really wonderful piece. This is the cadenza from his sonata for alto saxophone and piano. And that's the cadenza.
Wow, what a fascinating and almost haunting piece.
It's incredible, especially the second movement. I think it would be unconscionable to play that without piano, but the second movement in particular is stunning and very dark. Very,
Yeah.
very beautiful writing.
Yeah, it's pretty great to hear something like that that really shows off the uh unique qualities of the saxophone.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. The maestro really did his homework in coming to understand the range of the instrument and the qualities of different registers. It's a beautifully written piece for the saxophone, much like the Creston. My
Hmm.
understanding is that the maestro recently wrote a bass clarinet concerto. Am I recalling that correct?
Yes, actually, yeah, that was performed by David Gould. We recently had him on the podcast as well. So if any listeners are curious, you can check that out.
Very cool.
Yeah, yeah, it was a really fantastic piece.
I bet.
So I understand you have one more that you want to play?
Sure, I'll play Syrinx by Claude Debussy. This is originally written for flute. I actually used this piece as an encore when I was in Vancouver, uh, and I thought it would be a nice and appropriate piece to bring back for this interview. So originally on flute, I've transcribed this for soprano saxophone.
Absolutely wonderful.
Thank you.
Just a beautiful piece. Well, Jeff, do you have any last words of wisdom for our audience while they're just sitting stuck at home?
Well, I think we've all discovered during this time how important it is to remain connected to our loved ones and those close to us, um, through whatever channels we can. And even though we're not able to see people in person, I feel like there are so many avenues and so many avenues of communication that, in strange ways, have been opened up during this period, and so many opportunities to connect softly and gently with people that we care about. And I would just encourage everyone to continue exploring all the ways in which this period, for all its strife and hardship, allows for introspection and quiet exploration of whatever is important to each of us. I know that it's had that unexpected impact for me, and I hope that for listeners as well. For all of the difficulties, there have been the silver linings too.
Well, thank you so much, Jeff. And I, for one, really hope that we get to see you back at the VSO someday before too long.
Me too.
All right. Well, you take care, Jeff.
Thank you, Ashley, and thanks for having me.
Stay tuned for more VSO Encore episodes released every week. Find it on our social media, our website at vancouversymphony.org, or on the Spotify app. The recording you heard today was Paul Creston's Saxophone Concerto, performed by the Vancouver Symphony Orchestra, Maestro Salvador Brotons conducting at Skyview Concert Hall on November 3, 2019, with featured soloist Jeff Siegfried.